Hello. It's 4:20. So let's get high. Just well, let's get high first. Well, I just want to say first that what do I want to say? Yes. I want to say first that my internet has really been acting up and they're having problems. And so it should be forewarned. So I decided what I'm going to do is read from my recent book, Sex: A Metaphor to History, Trump 7-7 and the Thousand Years of Woman. And so if my internet goes off, I'll try to catch it and stop. All right. Well, just a second. That joint was not tasty at all. I'm not sure why I did that. Just like to have a good taste in my mouth and my brain. All right. Much better. Introduction. Time viewed as a line can only be broken up into eras. But time plotted in a spiral reveals the form of creation. Sex, more than any other human attribute, is intrinsically tied to time. Sex has a time, suddenly, spontaneously aroused when clarity arises. Pregnancy has an exact 9-month time schedule. The sex act has a beginning when man enters in. Then there is a middle time while man plows the soil before finally planting the seed. The many human endeavors are likened to sex, where a commitment incurred through love brings about work focused at a goal to be redeemed sometime in the future as pleasure. A spiral is more sexy than a line or even a circle because a spiral is made from the line of man integrated into the circle of woman, coming together for a common purpose to reach climax together. Why should human history be any different? History appears careening in an ever changing tide, merging with the infinite ocean of time. But what if time were segmented into a beginning, middle, and end? The 5,000-year Mayan calendar and the 6,000-year Hebrew calendar begin and end at a precise moment. The 6,000-year calendar begins with the creation of man into a feminine world where woman is hidden. The 5,000-year calendar begins 666 years later, as if the 666 is conception, slated to conclude 5,000 years in the future. The ancients saw into the future and termed our time the end of days. When the calendars end, 6, the line of man, enters into the circle of 7 as the world begins the long-awaited 1,000 years of woman in peace. Each 1,000-year segment cycles around the climax towards revolution when man holds woman above himself. Without recognizing the form of creation segmented into 1,000-year cycles, the power structure is able to hide behind walls of misinformation like the Big Bang Theory, because only confusion can quell the curiosity for truth. Religion plays a big part in hiding and skewing the truth. Knowing the confines of time allows free choice expression within a spatial reality. Doing the right thing at the wrong time is inevitably doomed to failure, as is doing the wrong thing at the right time. Only through understanding the sequences of time can we find our true place in creation. The purpose of this book is to introduce the world to the concept of the coming 1,000 years of woman and peace happening here on earth in the near beautiful future. Unfortunately, those traditions carrying this wisdom for thousands of years have been unwilling to share this knowledge with the world. Though warned by the esoteric literature not to reveal these secrets, an added caveat gives permission by saying, when the world is falling apart, teach it all. As an independent Jewish truth seeker, I intend to reveal everything. Preface. I began my journey into the secret of life just as I entered my 26th year. I recently turned 76, having pursued these secrets embedded in my Jewish soul for 50 years. This book is a culmination of that journey. I joined the Navy at 17, was on the ship that started the Vietnam War, was released in 1965 in San Francisco when LSD was still legal. I was seeking a diversity of people and experiences to better understand life, so I took to the road. For the next 5 years, I hitchhiked 30,000 miles. In many ways, the 60s was a virgin generation, since there had never been anything quite like the 60s. Many people recognized a seed was being sown for the future and gave their lives believing in destiny. 50 years later, the seed has sprouted and grown into a new perception of reality, now offering up her fruit, a pipe dream ripe to be grasped and inhaled. As the 60s ended, I abandoned the road and began studying the Torah with a hidden collection of secret seekers, tracing back 9 generations who had recently been transported from Russia to Brooklyn, New York. I am the 10th and final extension of that branch. Actually, the Russians were not allowed to learn the secret. They could only learn about the secret. They were constrained from the very beginning of their dynasty, 9 generations earlier, not to study the Zohar. But their leader in each generation would teach them what was relevant. The Rebbes in each generation wrote voluminously, and by the time I arrived on the scene, hundreds of years later, the plethora of books were bubbling up into printed words like a spring destined to build into a raging river. Many books had been rumored, but only a few manuscripts had been released. Much had been lost during the two wars. I was born in 1944 between D-Day, June 6, 1944, and the dropping of the atomic bomb on August 6, 1945. From my infancy, I recall the crematorium before being exploded back into this world. My way to the secret has been circuitous at best, more like a drop of water slowly passing through the heart dark ground on the way to the sea. After a year with the Russians, having learned to read Hebrew and a rudimentary understanding of concepts, I left to drive a truck in New York City. After 5 years, I turned to run a one-man print shop outside of Ann Arbor, Michigan. 5 years later, I moved to Israel, where I lived in the ancient city of Sfat, one of the four holy cities corresponding to the four elements fire, air, water, and earth. Sfat is the element of air. Across the valley from Sfat is where the Zohar was composed 2,000 years ago. More than a millennium later, a small gathering of hidden secret seekers caused the Ari living in Egypt to have a vision. The Ari followed his vision to Tzfat and taught there for 3 years before passing away in his 30s. The Ari never wrote anything, but what he taught became the fundamental light called the Kabbalah, receive. A few generations later began the 10 generations of the Hasidim. Kabbalah is meant for the scholar, while Hasidut is meant for the people. I have two abilities with which I have opened the secret door and discovered the truth. My first ability is, ever since getting out of the Navy, and probably even before that, I don't like people telling me what to do, and I don't want to be owned. The other is I'm autistic. My consternation with the rabbis has only grown with time, which has been an advantage so as not to be constrained by their well tested dictates, restrictions, and patterned thinking. The Talmud teaches concerning the text in the Torah, you work and you will be satiated with physical blessings. The rabbis taught, do your physical work and God will bless you. Rabbi Shimon, author of the Zohar, taught, the study of Torah is our work. Study the Torah and God will give you what you need. The Talmud concludes, some did as rabbis and they were successful, while others did like Rabbi Shimon and failed. Was the great Rabbi Shimon wrong? My Russian teacher, Rav Abba, who taught me to read, explained the people who went according to Rabbi Shimon did not know how to wait. I have taken the path of Rabbi Shimon and I have failed throughout my life, but I have waited. I have continually studied until I am ready to succeed because I have found the truth inside the secret. My most obvious autistic trait is my inability to remember articulated sound. As a result of this disability, particularly having to learn my first language other than English, I resorted to vision. Where others could rattle off the Hebrew prayers without a book, after 50 years, I'm unable to say a line of Hebrew text without looking into the book. Even then, I often mispronounce the word. Yet this also has an unexpected reward because no scholar would take me seriously, increasing my chances of actually finding the truth I sought. Seeking truth is a lonely occupation with no real reward since truth is worth little in our false world. And as soon as you sell it, truth loses all credibility. I remember standing on the bow of a mighty ship sliding up and down on mammoth, sultry, succulent, ebony waves, reducing the ship into a boat, thinking, if I don't know what is true, then how can I know what to do? This random thought, resulting from weeks of musing while crossing the biggest ocean in the world, has patterned my life. Eventually, I concluded that I was wrong. Better to live your life. But I was already hooked on the journey. I wanted to know the truth. The point in life is to intend good. Being right is just an accident. As a result, even though my actions were often errant, my intentions were pure, so God has watched over me. Thank you. My time has finally come and I am ready for the fight. Men to are made to fight, and being alone is how a male becomes a man. My first 25 years of life had beaten me down until I was no more than dust. But from there emerged a new person who had found a path in life. I have a sharp intellect and a good memory, so I went to fight with the Torah. I was equipped with pointed questions and set traps, my tongue sharp as a sword. The fallow soil of my brain was suddenly drenched in life affirming dew. My first exposure to this new path had been standing in a cramped room filled with old tombs of big, thick, tattered books replete with yellow pages where each letter was pressed into the paper, making a permanent dent beyond the fading ink. The books were in an unfamiliar alphabet, but when I saw someone kiss a book, before returning the volume to the shelf, I fell in love and wanted to learn them all. Because I could not connect to the audio aspect of Hebrew, I read slowly, focusing on my ability to understand the vision within the word. Even brilliant people who had been studying all their lives, understood transmissions of concept, I was able to comprehend the vision hiding within these archaic symbols beyond the concept. No one could understand how I could read these books without being able to pronounce the words. Even more, they could not corroborate or refute my own unique sagacity. After a year having acquired the rudimentary skills to unlock the Torah, I left and went on my own journey, both physically through my endless meanderings on this planet and spiritually through my daily devotion to my studies. One book led to another, clarifying this specialized language fit only for honest seekers of the truth. I became my own authority, constantly testing my vision against new particulars. The vast majority of the Kabbalah focuses on information pertaining to the attenuating spiritual light eventually seeping into our crude world. I had successfully composed a picture in my mind of the spiritual realm funneling light into our spiritual reality. I began to see how everything traces back to the tree of life composed on three different metaphoric levels reflected in the symmetry of trees with roots, trunk, and branches replicated in the three segments of the human form: head, torso, hips. Everything began conforming to this configuration, causing physical life. Sent the manuscript to the Library of Congress to validate the timing of my words, since in my book, written in 1998, I predicted, based on my studies into the tree of life, that there would undoubtedly be discovered in the new future 5 moons circling the planet Pluto, the furthest planet in our solar system. Pluto is the ninth planet from the sun. 10 years later, astronomers made that same discovery and recently flew by for corroboration. I also predicted they will find oceans beneath the surface of Mars. Since then, I left the Kabbalah I left the Kabbalah, key to the Zohar, and took up learning the actual Zohar, the final and ultimate hidden text. For 20 years, I have been studying Zohar, trying to answer the fundamental claim written towards the end of the Zohar. These words are meant for the end of days. when the calendar runs out of years. And here we are, just 200 years from that end. The Zohar was written in the conglomeration of ancient Hebrew and Aramaic, with no clear direction to the free thinking storytelling in the seemingly chaotic text. Yet, the Zohar answers all questions. Little by little, the Zohar draws in the seeker of truth until chaotically consumed by the fire. The Zohar is the fourth and final level in the tree of life, commensurate with the fruit from the tree. I have plucked that succulent fruit from the tree of life. I have sliced and diced that fruit for easy consumption. Now I bring forth my effort to the reader with humility. Thank you for reading my book. Please do not read this book as a line, because the writing is not incrementally written. Because the writing is not incrementally written. And please do not read this book as a circus of trying to persuade through repetition. Rather, read my book as a spiral spinning in to a concluding point, allowing the vision to unwind inside your mind. All right. So I wanted to say this in the beginning, but I forgot that, I started doing this live like this because I wanted to make way, if someone wanted to chat, if someone wanted to ask a question. So instead of going on, we got 6 minutes or so. So, either based on what I read or something else, I kind of enjoy reading this stuff because, books are sort of like tarot card readings. Once you do it, you kind of forget about it because you want to go on to another one. And so it's nice to reread what I wrote. I mean, sometimes I cringe because I could have written a thing better or been more, precise, or there was a typo. Oy vey. But, these two books, Sex, a Metaphor to History, Trump 7-7 and the Thousand Years of Woman, and Zohar, Beyond the Black Hole, are just the books that are so personal to me. I just didn't want to incur an editor. It was just, I went over it and over it because somehow these, I think every writer feels like they, to some degree, channel. But I'm not channeling, these are my words. But sometimes I must admit that sometimes when I'm stymied for a word, I feel like there's some group up there throwing me words. Try this word out. And it's usually just the right word. So whatever's happening, I'm down with it. It ended up, in this book that I'm really quite proud about. These two books are just really, the culmination of just 50 years of work, of really a lifetime of work. I've been searching for these things and how to put them into a way that people can get this information. And my way is writing, and I also talk. I've been doing a lot of podcasts lately, one or two a week, and I really enjoy doing them. I really have sort of something to podcast now. I have these books which are coming out eminently. This book, I'm reissuing it through Ingram Sparks, because that will allow it to get into bookstores. I'll have so it says it's reconnecting, but having so much difficulty with this internet. Anyways, so I'm really and the people have been interviewing me, and I've really been digging the interview, and they want to have me back, and they're just because all this information is new information. And this new information is truly taken from the other side of the black hole and illuminates everything in creation. So we can see truly what it is, and we can then, focus our efforts in the proper way, which will reclaim our earth and which will be honest and truthful and kind and all these things. I see that I'm now I understand what's going on.